Captain Jake Morrison rubbed his tired eyes and looked at the communication screens again. Something was wrong. Very wrong. For 30 years, he had been listening to Earth's radio signals from his station on Kepler 442b. Earth was always noisy. The humans never stopped talking. Every day brought thousands of signals from the blue planet. Military messages, TV shows, internet data, emergency broadcasts, and radio chatter filled the space around Earth like a constant storm of noise. Other alien races often complained about it. The Zephyrians called it signal pollution. The Crystal, beings from Andromeda, said humans talk too much. Even the warrior Korath found Earth's communication volume annoying. But today was different. Today, Earth was silent. Lieutenant Amy Brooks sat at her station checking the equipment for the 5th time. Her hands shook slightly as she adjusted the controls. The silence from Earth made her nervous. She had never heard Earth go quiet before. "Not even for a few minutes. Captain Morrison," she called out, her voice tight with worry. "The readings are the same. No signals from Earth at all. Every frequency is dead." Morrison walked over to her station and looked at the data himself. The screens showed flat lines where there should have been waves of communication. It was like looking at a heart monitor for someone who had just died. "Run a full system check," Morrison ordered. "Maybe our equipment is broken." Brooks worked quickly, testing every piece of equipment in the station. The computers were fine. The receivers were working perfectly. The satellite dishes were pointing in the right direction. Everything was functioning normally. The problem was not with their equipment. The problem was with Earth. Morrison had seen solar storms disrupt Earth's communications before. He had watched the humans deal with equipment failures and power outages. But even during the worst disasters, some signals always got through. Emergency beacons kept broadcasting. Military bases had backup systems. Space stations around Earth never went completely silent. This was different. This was total silence. Within an hour, other monitoring stations across the galaxy reported the same thing. Earth had gone dark. No radio signals, no television broadcasts, no internet traffic, no military communications, nothing. The news spread quickly through the Galactic Communication Network. The Galactic Trade Federation called an emergency meeting. The Council of Worlds sent urgent messages to all member species. Even the mysterious Shadow Watchers, who rarely spoke to anyone, emerged from their hidden dimensions to investigate. Dr. Lisa Carter was the galaxy's top expert on human behavior. She had studied humans for over 20 years and written dozens of research papers about their strange habits. When the Federation asked her to explain what might cause Earth to go silent, her answer frightened everyone. "Humans do not choose to be quiet," she told the Emergency Council meeting. "Their entire civilization is built on constant communication. They talk to each other across vast distances. They broadcast entertainment for fun. They send messages to empty space hoping aliens will hear them. For humans to stop communicating means something terrible has happened." The council members listened in silence. Many of them remembered when humans first appeared on the galactic scene 50 years ago. Back then, Earth was just another primitive planet with basic radio technology. But humans learned fast. Very fast. They went from simple radio signals to advanced space communication in just a few decades. Some species had been impressed by human progress. Others had been worried. Humans expanded quickly into space. They built colonies on nearby worlds. They sent exploration ships to distant star systems. They made contact with alien civilizations and learned their technologies. The Zephyrian ambassador, Veltar, spoke up during the meeting. Perhaps the humans simply destroyed themselves. Young civilizations often do. They develop powerful weapons before they develop wisdom. But Dr. Carter shook her head. "I have studied their wars and conflicts. Even during their worst battles, humans keep communicating. They send news reports from battlefields. They broadcast propaganda. They coordinate with allies and negotiate with enemies. Humans fight with words as much as with weapons." The crystalline hegemony representative suggested that maybe Earth had suffered a natural disaster. A massive solar flare, perhaps, or an asteroid impact. but the long-range sensors showed no signs of such events. Earth's sun was normal. No large objects had hit the planet. The atmosphere showed no signs of major disturbance. As hours passed with no word from Earth, panic began to spread through the galaxy. Humans had become important trading partners for many species. Earth exported unique foods, art, and entertainment that other worlds had grown to enjoy. Human colonies provided valuable resources and services. If humanity was gone, it would affect the entire galactic economy. More importantly, many species had grown fond of humans despite their noisy habits. Humans were curious and friendly. They shared their knowledge freely. They helped other species solve problems. They brought energy and innovation to every project they joined. The Andromedan Science Collective offered to send their fastest ships to investigate. The journey to Earth would take 2 weeks, even with the most advanced faster-than-light drives. 2 weeks of not knowing what had happened to humanity. Captain Morrison continued monitoring Earth from his distant station. He found himself hoping to hear even the smallest signal from the planet he had watched for so long. A distress call, a maintenance beacon, anything that would prove humans were still alive. As the first day of silence turned into the second, then the third, the galaxy began to accept a grim possibility. Humanity might be extinct. The young, loud, energetic species that had burst onto the galactic scene might have vanished as quickly as they had appeared. But some observers noticed strange details that did not fit the extinction theory. Earth's orbital satellites were still in position. The space elevators connecting Earth to its orbital stations showed no signs of damage. The moon bases appeared intact from long-range scans. If humans had been destroyed by war or disaster, surely there would be wreckage. Debris fields in space, damaged structures, signs of whatever had killed them. Instead, everything looked normal, except for the silence. Dr. Elena Rodriguez, a xenopsychologist who specialized in crisis behavior, proposed a different theory that made some council members uncomfortable. What if the silence is not a sign of death, she asked during one of the emergency sessions. What if it is a sign of preparation? The question hung in the air like a dark cloud. Everyone in the galaxy knew that humans were unpredictable. They had surprised the galactic community many times with their rapid technological advancement and unusual solutions to problems. Could the silence be intentional? Were the humans planning something? And if so, what could be so important that an entire civilization would go quiet to prepare for it? As the investigation fleets prepared to depart for Earth, these questions haunted the minds of every alien, diplomat, scientist, and military leader in the galaxy. The day Earth went silent would be remembered as the day everything changed. But none of them yet understood just how much everything was about to change. Commander Ryan Torres stood on the bridge of his ship, the Stellar Phoenix, watching the stars rush past through the viewport. Behind him, officers from 12 different alien species worked at their stations, all focused on the same mission: reach Earth and discover what had happened to humanity. The investigation fleet was the largest joint operation in galactic history. Ships from every major civilization traveled together toward the Sol system. Zephyrian cruisers with their elegant, curved hulls flew alongside the massive cube-shaped vessels of the crystalline hegemony. Korath warships, bristling with weapons, maintained formation with the sleek science ships of the Andromedan Collective. Torres had been chosen to lead the fleet because he was one of the few military commanders who had worked closely with humans. He had served alongside human officers during the border conflicts with space pirates near the Vega system. He knew how humans thought and fought. The other species hoped his knowledge would help them understand what had happened to Earth. Dr. Karen White, the fleet's xenobiologist, had spent the first week of their journey studying every piece of data about human communication patterns. Her findings worried everyone who heard them. She presented her report to the senior officers in the main briefing room. Humans are not like other species, she explained, pointing to charts and graphs on the display screens. Most civilizations communicate when they need to share information or coordinate activities. Humans communicate constantly whether they need to or not. They talk to express emotions. They broadcast entertainment just for fun. They send messages into space hoping someone will answer, even when they know no one is listening. Lieutenant Colonel Ben Martinez, the fleet's military strategist, studied the data with growing concern. What you are saying is that for humans to stop communicating is like asking them to stop breathing. Dr. White nodded grimly. Their cities produce millions of signals every hour. Their military networks never shut down. Their entertainment broadcasts continue day and night. Their personal communication devices are always active. For all of this to stop at the same time suggests either complete technological failure or total destruction of their civilization. As the fleet traveled deeper into human space, they began finding evidence that supported both theories and contradicted them at the same time. The outer monitoring stations near Pluto were silent, but they appeared undamaged. The research outposts around Jupiter showed no signs of activity, but their solar panels were still collecting energy. The mining operations in the asteroid belt had stopped working, but the equipment looked like it had been carefully shut down rather than destroyed. Captain Torres ordered detailed scans of every human installation they passed. The results painted a confusing picture. Everything looked normal from the outside, but nothing was functioning. It was like finding a city where all the buildings were intact, but no one was home. Dr. Elena Rodriguez, the fleet's xenopsychologist, had been studying human behavior patterns for years. She had written papers about human responses to crisis situations. During the journey to Earth, she reviewed every case of humans going silent in dangerous situations. "I have found something interesting," she announced during a senior staff meeting. "When humans are in extreme danger, they do not become quiet. They become louder. They call for help. They send distress signals. They broadcast warnings to anyone who will listen. The only time humans voluntarily go silent is when they are hunting." The word hunting sent a chill through the mixed species crew. Everyone knew that humans were predators. Their forward-facing eyes, their aggressive expansion into space, their competitive nature, all signs of a species that had evolved to hunt and kill. But they had seemed to outgrow those instincts as they joined galactic civilization. Torres remembered his experiences fighting alongside humans against space pirates. Humans were excellent warriors, but they preferred to avoid fights when possible. They used tactics and technology to win battles quickly with minimal casualties. They were more interested in exploring and building than in conquering and destroying. But what if something had changed? What if some threat had awakened the old hunting instincts in humanity? As the fleet approached the inner solar system, they began detecting the first signs that Earth was not as dead as it appeared. Long-range sensors picked up faint energy signatures from the planet's surface, not the massive power outputs of a thriving technological civilization, but small, hidden sources scattered around the globe. Lieutenant Susan Phillips, Torres's communication officer, reported strange readings from Earth's electromagnetic field. "Sir, I am detecting organized patterns in the planetary magnetic field that should not exist naturally. It looks like some kind of artificial modification." Torres frowned as he studied the data. Humans had been experimenting with magnetic field manipulation for weather control and radiation protection, but the patterns Phillips had detected were far more sophisticated than anything humans had demonstrated before. The fleet established orbit around Earth, and Torres ordered a full sensor sweep of the planet. What they found defied explanation. The surface showed clear signs of human presence. Cities were intact, roads were maintained, agricultural areas were being cultivated. But there were no electromagnetic signatures of active technology. It was as if someone had turned off every electronic device on the planet simultaneously while leaving everything else untouched. Cars sat in parking lots with fuel in their tanks, but no electrical systems operating. Buildings had lights, but no power flowing to them. Airports had planes on runways that would never take off. The mystery deepened when the sensor operators detected movement on the surface. Humans were still alive. They could be seen walking in groups, working in fields, and gathering in public spaces. But they were not using any technology more advanced than simple hand tools. Dr. White studied the scans with confusion. "This makes no sense. Humans have been dependent on technology for over a century. Their food production, transportation, communication, and even their medical care all rely on complex electronic systems. How are they surviving without any of it? Torres had an uncomfortable thought. What if the humans had not lost their technology? What if they had hidden it? He called for a meeting of all senior officers and scientific staff. Representatives from every species in the fleet gathered in the main conference room to discuss their findings. We are looking at this wrong, Torres told the assembled group. We have been assuming that something happened to the humans. What if the humans made something happen? What if the silence is not the result of a disaster, but the beginning of a plan? The Zephyrian science officer objected. That is impossible. No civilization can coordinate such a massive shutdown of technology across an entire planet. The logistics alone would be overwhelming. But the Korath military advisor disagreed. Humans are very good at coordination when they need to be. During their world wars, they organized millions of people for complex operations. They built secret weapons projects that remained hidden for years. If any species could achieve planet-wide coordination, it would be humans. Dr. Rodriguez nodded thoughtfully. There is precedent for this in human history. During their Second World War, they maintained radio silence before major military operations. They would shut down all communications to prevent enemies from detecting their preparations. The implications of this theory were frightening. If humans had voluntarily gone silent to prepare for something, what were they preparing for? And why would they need to hide their preparations from the galaxy? Torres ordered the fleet to maintain a safe distance from Earth. While they tried to establish communication, standard diplomatic frequencies were broadcast toward the planet, requesting contact with human authorities. Emergency channels were monitored for any response. For 3 days, the messages went unanswered. Earth remained silent. Then, on the 4th day, something changed. Phillips detected a signal coming from Earth, but it was unlike anything in the standard galactic communication protocols. The signal was using a frequency that should not have been possible with known human technology. Torres looked at the data streaming across his screens and felt a cold fear growing in his stomach. Either the humans had developed technology far beyond what they had revealed to the galaxy, or something else entirely had taken control of Earth. The signal was brief, but clear. It was directed specifically at the investigation fleet, using ship identification codes that no human should have known. The message was simple but chilling. We need to talk. The communication screen in the Stellar Phoenix's command center flickered to life, and Commander Torres found himself looking at a human face he did not recognize. The man appeared to be in his 50s, with gray hair and calm eyes that seemed to see everything. He wore a military uniform that was clearly human, but with insignia that Torres had never seen before. I am Admiral Kevin Hayes, commander of Earth's Deep Space Defense Network, the human said in a steady voice. I apologize for the dramatic nature of our silence, but it was necessary to ensure the success of our operation. Torres felt his throat go dry. Operation? What operation? Hayes smiled, but there was no warmth in it. The operation to save humanity from extinction. You see, Commander, we have been aware of the galactic plan to eliminate us for quite some time. The bridge of the Stellar Phoenix fell silent. Officers from different species looked at each other with confusion and growing alarm. Torres managed to find his voice. Admiral Hayes, I do not understand what you are talking about. This fleet was sent to investigate your disappearance, not to harm you. Of course, Hayes replied. You were sent to confirm that we were gone, to verify that the plan had worked, to make sure that humanity would never again threaten the established order of galactic civilization. Dr. Elena Rodriguez stepped forward. Admiral, there has been no plan to harm humanity. The galactic community has welcomed human participation in our civilization. Hayes turned his attention to her. Dr. Rodriguez, I presume? Your work on crisis psychology is quite impressive. Unfortunately, it does not make you aware of the secret communications between your governments. The Admiral gestured to someone, off-screen, and the display changed to show a series of intercepted messages. The text was in multiple alien languages, but translation software made the content clear. Torres read the messages with growing horror. The Zephyrian Council discussing the human problem and the need for population control measures. The crystalline hegemony planning, protective custody protocols for human colonies. The Korath Empire debating the final solution to human expansion. These messages date back 3 years, Hayes explained. We have been monitoring your communications since we first joined the galactic community. It took us some time to break your encryption, but human-computer technology advances quickly. Torres stared at the intercepted communications in shock. He had never seen these messages before. They were clearly from high-level government sources, but they suggested a conspiracy involving multiple species. The Zephyrian representative on the bridge began to object, but Hayes continued speaking. The plan was elegant in its simplicity. Wait for humanity to spread further into space, making Earth more isolated. Then launch simultaneous attacks on all human colonies while cutting off Earth's ability to communicate or coordinate a defense. The surviving humans would be placed under protective custody to prevent future expansion. Major Susan Phillips, Torres's communication officer, worked quickly at her station. Sir, I am detecting massive power signatures from multiple locations on Earth's surface. Whatever they shut down, they are turning it back on. Hayes nodded. Thank you, Major Phillips. Yes, we are bringing our systems back online. During our 3-year silent period, we made some significant improvements to our technology. The display, screens around the bridge began showing impossible readings. Energy outputs from Earth were climbing far beyond anything humans had demonstrated before. Sensor scans detected structures that had not been there during previous observations of Earth. Dr. Karen White stared at the data in disbelief. This is impossible. These readings suggest technology decades ahead of known human capabilities. Not decades ahead, Hayes corrected. Simply different. We approached the problem from a direction that your species never considered. While you were developing bigger ships and more powerful weapons, we were learning to understand and control information itself. As if to demonstrate his point, the navigation systems on every ship in the investigation fleet began responding to commands that none of the crews had given. The ships moved into new formations without any input from their pilots. Torres felt panic rising in his chest as his ship moved against his will. Admiral, what are you doing to our ships? Nothing harmful, Hayes assured him. We are simply demonstrating that your technology is not superior to ours. It is just different. And different means we can learn to control it. The formation the Yao ships were moving into became clear. It was a perfect sphere with each vessel positioned at precise coordinates. The mathematical precision of the arrangement was beautiful and terrifying. Dr. Nathan Price appeared on the communication screen beside Hayes. He was younger, with intense eyes and the look of someone who had spent years solving complex problems. During our silent period, Price explained, we analyzed every signal you ever broadcast, every communication protocol, every encryption method, every command structure. Your ships, your weapons, your defenses. We understand them all now. Torres realized with growing dread that the investigation fleet was completely helpless. Every system they relied on had been compromised by human infiltration. Hayes continued the explanation. 3 years ago, we discovered your plan to eliminate us. We had a choice. Fight a conventional war we could not win, or change the rules of the game entirely. General Linda Foster joined the conversation, her image appearing on another section of the screen. We evacuated our frontier colonies, but not because we were abandoning them. We were converting them into something your species have never seen before. Every human world you plan to attack is now a fortress designed specifically to counter your military capabilities. The scope of human deception was becoming clear. The silence had not been a sign of weakness or disaster. It had been preparation, time for the most elaborate military operation in galactic history. Colonel Mary Brooks appeared next, her presence adding to the growing sense that this conversation involved far more people than it appeared. Every civilian freighter that left human space during the past 3 years was actually a stealth weapons platform. Every trade delegation we sent to alien worlds included intelligence operatives. Every cultural exchange program allowed us to plant monitoring equipment in your most secure facilities. Torres found it hard to breathe. You have been spying on the entire galaxy? We have been protecting ourselves, Hayes corrected. When we learned that multiple species were planning our extinction, we decided to ensure that such a plan could never succeed. Dr. Charles Webb joined the growing group of humans on the screen. We also discovered something interesting about galactic civilization. The established powers maintain their control by preventing younger species from becoming too strong. They allow limited advancement, but they destroy any civilization that becomes a real threat to their dominance. The human admiral leaned forward slightly. This pattern has repeated for thousands of years. Species emerge, grow strong enough to be noticed, and then mysteriously disappear. Wars, plagues, technological failures. Always something different, but always the same result. Torres began to understand the full scope of what the humans had discovered. You are saying that the galactic community systematically eliminates emerging civilizations? Not all of them, Hayes replied. Some are allowed to survive as client states. Others are absorbed into existing empires. But any species that shows true independence and rapid advancement faces the same choice: submit or be destroyed. The communication screen split to show images from across the galaxy. Human monitoring stations that had been secretly established in every major star system. Human agents embedded in alien governments and military organizations. Human technology integrated into alien infrastructure without their knowledge. The day Earth went silent, Hayes concluded, was the day we disappeared from your sight so we could see everything you were doing. We used your own assumption of human extinction to hide the largest intelligence operation in galactic history. Torres looked around his bridge at officers from multiple species, all of whom were staring at the screens in shock. The investigation fleet had come to Earth expecting to find a dead civilization. Instead, they had discovered that humanity had been watching and preparing for 3 years. What happens now? Torres asked quietly. Hayes' smile was still cold, but there was something else in his expression now, something that might have been hope. Now we discuss the future of galactic civilization. Because the old way of doing things ends today, the Emergency Galactic Council meeting was unlike anything in recorded history. Representatives from every major civilization sat in their ships orbiting Earth, while Admiral Hayes and his team broadcast from what was clearly an enormous military command center deep beneath the planet's surface. Torres had seen military installations before, but nothing like this. The chamber behind Hayes was vast, with hundreds of human officers working at stations that displayed information from across the galaxy. Holographic maps showed ship movements in real time. Communication arrays processed thousands of signals simultaneously. It was the nerve center of an intelligence network that spanned known space. Before we discuss the future, Hayes began, I think it is important that everyone understands exactly what humanity discovered about the galactic community. Dr. Nathan Price stepped forward with a datapad in his hands. 3 years ago, our cryptographers broke the encryption on classified communications between the major powers. What we found was disturbing. The main display showed a timeline stretching back over 1,000 years. Red markers indicated the disappearance of emerging civilizations. Yellow markers showed when established powers had expanded their territory or influence. The pattern is clear, Price explained. Every few decades, a new species develops faster than light travel and begins expanding into space. Initially, they are welcomed into the galactic community. They are given limited access to technology and encouraged to develop trade relationships. He pointed to specific examples on the timeline. The Altarians were promising engineers who developed innovative ship designs. They were eliminated by a manufactured plague after they began building ships faster than the crystalline hegemony. The hegemony representative started to object, but Price continued without pause. The Centauri Federation created advanced agricultural techniques that could have fed billions. They suffered a convenient civil war that destroyed their homeworld, just as they were preparing to export their technology widely. More examples followed. The Vegan Republic, destroyed by pirates who somehow obtained military-grade weapons. The Tau Ceti Alliance, which fell apart due to internal conflicts that began immediately after they discovered new mining techniques. In every case, Price concluded, the emerging civilization was eliminated just as they were becoming genuinely useful to the galaxy. Their territory was absorbed by established powers. Their population was scattered or enslaved. Their technology was claimed by those who destroyed them. General Linda Foster took over the presentation. We also discovered the coordination mechanisms, secret communication channels between governments, joint military exercises disguised as cultural exchanges, weapon stockpiles positioned near emerging civilizations. She displayed intercepted communications that made Torres feel sick, military leaders discussing population reduction strategies, diplomats planning intervention scenarios, scientists developing weapons designed to target specific genetic markers. The most disturbing discovery, Foster continued, was the efficiency of the system. The established powers have perfected genocide. They can eliminate an entire civilization while making it look like an accident, a natural disaster, or internal conflict. Colonel Mary Brooks joined the presentation with information about active operations. When we began monitoring your communications, we discovered that the plan to eliminate humanity was already well advanced. Military assets had been positioned around our colonies. Biological weapons had been developed to target human genetics. Political operatives had infiltrated our governments. She showed satellite images of alien military bases that human intelligence had located near human colonies. The bases were hidden and heavily defended, clearly designed for offensive operations, rather than peaceful purposes. The attack was scheduled to begin 6 months from now, Brooks revealed, during the Galactic Peace Festival when human attention would be focused on celebrations rather than defense. Admiral Hayes returned to address the Council directly. Faced with this evidence, humanity had 3 choices. We could submit to slow extinction, fight a conventional war we could not win, or change the nature of the conflict entirely. Dr. Charles Webb appeared with a detailed breakdown of human preparations during the silent period. We chose the third option. Instead of building bigger ships or more powerful weapons, we focused on understanding and infiltrating our enemies. The scope of human intelligence operations was staggering. During 3 years of apparent silence, humans had placed monitoring equipment in every major alien facility. They had infiltrated government communications networks. They had positioned agents in key locations throughout galactic civilization. Every signal you broadcast we recorded, Webb explained. Every encryption method you used we broke. Every military exercise you conducted we observed. Every secret meeting you held we listened to. Captain Paul Jensen appeared to discuss the technical aspects of the operation. Your technology is not superior to ours. It is simply different. Each species developed along different paths, creating unique solutions to common problems. By studying all of your approaches, we were able to find weaknesses in each one. He demonstrated by taking control of various systems on the alien ships. Navigation computers began displaying human messages. Weapon systems powered down and refused to restart. Life support systems started playing human music instead of maintaining atmospheric readings. We did not need to defeat your technology, Jensen explained as he restored control to the ships. We only needed to understand it well enough to control it when necessary. The alien representatives sat in stunned silence as they realized the full extent of their vulnerability. Every system they relied on had been compromised. Every secret they thought was hidden had been observed. Dr. Helen Grant presented the intelligence analysis that had guided human strategy. We discovered that the galactic community operates on a simple principle: maintain the status quo by eliminating threats. Established powers cooperate to prevent any change that might challenge their dominance. She showed social and economic data that revealed how the current system benefited only a small number of species while keeping others in permanent subordination. Younger civilizations are allowed to exist only as sources of labor and resources. They are given just enough technology to be useful but never enough to be independent. Any species that shows signs of true advancement is marked for elimination. Hayes addressed the Council with growing intensity. This system has created a galaxy-wide stagnation. Scientific advancement has slowed to almost nothing because innovation is seen as dangerous. Exploration has become limited because new discoveries might upset the balance of power. General Robert Clay presented military intelligence about the scale of the conspiracy. We identified active elimination operations against 17 different Emerging civilizations. Some were scheduled for plague attacks. Others were marked for civil wars. Several were targeted for asteroid impacts that would look like natural disasters. The evidence was overwhelming. The galactic community that presented itself as peaceful and cooperative was actually a carefully maintained system of oppression and genocide. But the most important discovery, Hayes continued, was that this system is fragile. It depends on secrecy and surprise. If emerging civilizations knew what was planned for them, they could defend themselves. Dr. Sandra Lewis appeared, with data about human defensive preparations. During our silent period, we did not just gather intelligence. We prepared defenses for every emerging civilization in the galaxy. We positioned monitoring stations to detect attacks. We developed countermeasures for the weapons being prepared against them. The scope of human intervention was breathtaking. They had essentially created a shadow defense network that protected dozens of vulnerable species without their knowledge. We also prepared enforcement mechanisms, Lewis continued. Any attempt to implement the old genocide protocols will now trigger immediate intervention. The ship's weapons and bases that were positioned to eliminate emerging civilizations are now under our surveillance and control. Admiral Hayes stood up in his command center, and Torres could see hundreds of human officers working behind him. The old galactic order dies today. The system that has maintained power through murder and oppression ends now. He gestured to the displays showing the vast network of human intelligence and defensive assets throughout the galaxy. From this moment forward, emerging civilizations will be protected during their development. Scientific advancement will be encouraged rather than suppressed. Exploration will proceed without fear of territorial conquest by established powers. The alien representatives realized they were not just witnesses to a revelation. They were participants in a revolution that would reshape galactic civilization forever. The question now, Hayes concluded, is whether the established powers will adapt to this new reality or attempt to resist it. His expression made it clear that resistance would be futile. Humanity had spent 3 years preparing for this moment, and they held all the advantages. 6 months after the revelation, Admiral Hayes stood in the rebuilt United Nations building in New York, looking out at an assembly hall filled with representatives from across the galaxy. The irony was not lost on him that the same building, where humanity had once sought peaceful cooperation, now hosted the establishment of a new galactic order. The transformation had not been easy. Several species had attempted to resist human oversight, only to discover that their military capabilities had been neutralized before they could act. The Korath Empire had tried to launch attacks on human monitoring stations, but their ships had simply stopped working when they approached their targets. The Zephyrian Council had attempted to organize a coalition against human interference, but their communications had been intercepted and their plans exposed before they could act. Dr. Charles Webb, now serving as Earth's Secretary of Galactic Affairs, presented the final version of what humans called the New Compact. It was not a treaty between equals. It was a restructuring of galactic civilization under human oversight. The principles are simple, Webb explained to the assembled representatives. First, no species may attempt to eliminate or subjugate another species. Second, all military activities must be transparent and monitored. Third, technological advancement must be shared rather than hoarded. The enforcement mechanisms were both subtle and absolute. Every ship in space now carried human monitoring equipment, installed during maintenance visits to stations that were secretly under human control. Every communication system had been infiltrated with human monitoring software that could not be detected or removed. Every military base was watched by human observation platforms that appeared to be ordinary asteroids or space debris. Colonel Mary Brooks, now commanding the Rapid Response Fleet, demonstrated the system's capabilities. We can detect the formation of any hostile coalition within hours of its first planning meeting. We can neutralize any military threat before it reaches its target. We can prevent any genocide before the first shot is fired. On the display screens around the assembly hall, real-time images showed the extent of human surveillance. Ships throughout the galaxy, clearly marked with the insignia of various species, were revealed to be under human observation. Military. Installations that had seemed secure were shown to be monitored by hidden sensors. Government facilities that had believed their communications were private were exposed as completely transparent to human intelligence. The crystalline hegemony representative demanded to know how humans expected to maintain such an extensive system. "You are one species among thousands. You cannot watch everyone forever," General Robert Clay answered with quiet confidence. "We do not need to watch everyone. We only need to watch those who pose a threat to others. The vast majority of species have no desire to commit genocide or enslave their neighbors. They welcome protection from those who do." He gestured to a section of the assembly where representatives from dozens of younger civilizations sat together. These were species that had been marked for elimination under the old system, but were now thriving under human protection. "The Rigel Confederation has developed new medical technologies that will benefit the entire galaxy," Clay explained. "Under the old system, they would have been destroyed for becoming too advanced. Under the new system, their discoveries are being shared freely." Similar examples filled the display screens. The Sirius Republic had created breakthrough transportation methods. The Procyon Alliance had solved fundamental problems in energy production. The Vega Commonwealth had developed agricultural techniques that could end hunger on 1,000 worlds. "Innovation has accelerated across the galaxy," Dr. Sandra Lewis reported. "When species no longer fear destruction for their achievements, they achieve remarkable things." The economic benefits were undeniable. Trade had increased dramatically as species no longer needed to hide their capabilities from potential threats. Scientific collaboration had reached unprecedented levels as researchers shared discoveries instead of hoarding them. Exploration had expanded rapidly as new civilizations felt safe to venture into unknown territories. But the social changes were even more significant. For the first time in galactic history, emerging civilizations had role models to follow. They could see other young species succeeding and thriving, rather than mysteriously disappearing or falling into decline. Admiral Hayes addressed the assembly with the gravity of someone who understood the historical importance of the moment. "The galaxy has lived under a system of fear for thousands of years. Established powers maintained control by threatening destruction. Emerging civilizations remained weak because strength was punished." He paused to look around the hall at representatives from hundreds of different species. "That system created a galaxy of victims and oppressors. We have replaced it with a system of cooperation and protection." The human enforcement network had evolved beyond simple surveillance. Human advisors worked with emerging civilizations to help them develop safely. Human scientists collaborated on research projects that no single species could complete alone. Human mediators resolved conflicts before they could escalate into wars. Dr. Elena Rodriguez, now directing the Department of Galactic Psychology, reported on the social effects of the new system. "Species that have lived under constant threat for generations are beginning to show signs of genuine peace. Art, literature, and music are flourishing as cultures no longer need to focus entirely on survival." The changes were visible throughout the galaxy. Worlds that had been militarized for centuries were converting their weapons factories into research facilities. Species that had never trusted their neighbors were forming cooperative alliances. Civilizations that had stagnated under oppression were experiencing rapid cultural renaissance. Captain Paul Jensen, now leading the Technology Integration Division, explained how human oversight had actually accelerated technological development. "When species share their discoveries instead of hiding them, everyone benefits. We have seen more scientific breakthroughs in the past 6 months than in the previous 50 years. The resistance to human oversight had largely collapsed as the benefits became obvious. Even the most aggressive species found that cooperation brought them more advantages than confrontation. The Korath Empire discovered that their warrior culture was respected and valued when it was used to protect others rather than to conquer them. But Hayes was careful not to present the new system as perfect. "We are not claiming to have created a utopia," he told the assembly. "Conflicts still arise, problems still exist, species still disagree about important issues." Dr. Nathan Price, now directing the Conflict Resolution Agency, provided examples of ongoing challenges. We have prevented 3 attempted genocides, stopped 2 major wars before they started, and mediated over 100 territorial disputes. The galaxy is not perfect, but it is safer. The human approach to enforcement was designed to be minimal but effective. Rather than ruling directly, humans preferred to make aggressive actions impossible while allowing peaceful development to proceed naturally. We do not tell species how to govern themselves, Webb explained. We do not dictate their cultural practices or social structures. We only intervene when one species attempts to harm another. The success of the system had surprised even its creators. Many humans had expected more resistance and more conflict. Instead, they found that most species welcomed protection from the threats that had dominated galactic politics for millennia. As the assembly session concluded, Hayes reflected on how much had changed since Earth had gone silent. The day that had begun as humanity's greatest deception had become the starting point for the galaxy's greatest transformation. 6 months ago, Earth went silent because we feared for our survival, he told the gathered representatives. Today, we speak because we hope for our future, the future of all species working together, exploring together, growing together. The applause that followed was not polite diplomatic courtesy. It was genuine appreciation from civilizations that had found safety and opportunity in the new galactic order. Outside the assembly hall, Torres walked with Hayes toward the human command center. "Do you think it will last?" Torres asked. "Can humans really maintain this system indefinitely?" Hayes considered the question carefully. "We do not need to maintain it indefinitely. We only need to maintain it long enough for the galaxy to learn new habits. Once species become accustomed to cooperation instead of competition, once they see that innovation is rewarded rather than punished, once they understand that diversity makes everyone stronger rather than weaker, the system will maintain itself." They paused at a viewing window that looked out over New York Harbor. Ships from dozens of species were visible in the sky, coming and going on peaceful missions of trade, exploration, and cooperation. The day Earth went silent, Hayes concluded, was the last day of the old galaxy. Today begins the first day of the new one. In the distance, human monitoring stations tracked every movement in space, ensuring that the peace they had created would endure. The galaxy had learned that silence could be more powerful than noise, that preparation could be more effective than confrontation, and that protection was more valuable than domination.